these are the fabrics I am using for this project. These have been designed by Susie Quilts for Art Gallery Fabrics, and the range is called Revolve. I have got a fat quarter of each, but the pattern will state on there how much you will exactly need, but I have got what we put into our subscription box. The pattern will tell you how many strips you need to cut from each of your 4 fabrics. It will also tell you how wide they need to be, because they're all different depending on the shape that we're going to be cutting today. When you come to cut your fabrics, you need to cut them across what would be the width of the fabric when it's on the bolt. So you are going to be cutting it from the selvage edge across. So each of the pieces will be cut in that way. The pattern also states how many of each strip you need to cut. So let's just go through those. So I've got A1, there's 1 piece, A2 and A3 is 2 pieces. I've got B2, 1 piece, C1, C2 and C3, which is all 1 strip of each. And then I've got 1 of D1 and 1 of D2. Now you will also see just here I have got some diamonds cut from fabric B. Now with the pattern you will also get a template for the diamond which you can cut out. Now because I'm using a striped fabric, I wanted to have the stripes going vertically down the diamond. Now the method I'm going to show you how to cut the diamonds without using a template, this would have meant that if I was going to do it that way, that the diamond would end up with the stripes going a different way to how I wanted them. So these diamonds are going to go into our first block that we're going to do, and because they've got a diamond at the top and the bottom, that's why I wanted to have them coming vertically down the diamond. I am also going to show you how to do to cut the smaller diamonds using the strip B2, and I'll also show you how to cut the bigger diamonds but with some different fabric that's not going to matter which way the stripe goes. So those are all my fabric strips ready. So following the pattern, you're now ready to cut your shapes out of each of your strips. For cutting the large diamond without the template, you're going to need your rotary cutter and your quilting ruler. First of all, we're going to find the 60-degree angle on your ruler. This is going to be the angles of all of the shapes that we are making today. You're going to place that 60-degree angle on the bottom edge of your fabric, and you want this side to be sat so as it meets the far left hand corner of this piece of fabric, and your 60-degree line should be along that bottom edge. So we're just going to trim that piece off. Now for the large diamond, you could either, if you wanted to, you could use it and just pop it on your piece of fabric and then either draw a line down the side and then just trim it, or you can go back to doing it with the ruler. So again, we're going to place this 60-degree line along this bottom edge, and for this particular size piece we're going to it's going to be 3.5 inches along this edge. So if you just find where your 3.5 inches mark is, so you're looking at 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, and there's your 1/2 inch, and place that ruler down on that bottom edge, and then just pop your 3.5 inch line on the edge of your fabric, and then we will just trim that end piece off. And there you have a diamond which has been cut with your rotary cutter and with your ruler. So we'll just compare that to one of the template pieces, and it should be the same size. Now you'll see that the template pieces, I've got a bit of a tongue twister, that have got the rounded edge on the top. That's just how it prints out from the design program that I use. So that is the same size, just with the extra bit on the bottom. So that's your 2 ways of cutting your larger diamonds for this project. For this part of the video, we're going to take a look at how we're going to cut all of the shapes using your rotary cutter and your quilting ruler. Now, I have cut a piece of fabric that, as you can see, is not in this pattern, but I wanted to show you how to cut these pieces using a bigger piece of fabric than the strips which we have cut for the pattern. So I have got this strip of sunflower fabric, which is a fabric we had a few years ago in one of our subscription boxes. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to do the hexagon shape. Now in this video, there are 2 different ways that we can actually cut the hexagon shape. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to do it using the Sew Easy Hexagon Template ruler. If you were a subscriber to September's box, you would have had one of these handy little shapes in your box. If you don't have one of these, then we're also going to cut it just with the rotary cutter and the ruler. But first of all, we're going to do it with the hexagon template ruler. So you'll need your rotary cutter, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to place the template onto your fabric for the size of the hexagon that you're going to be cutting. Hopefully you can see that there are different sizes printed on this ruler, and we're going to do the 3.5 inch. That's the width of the fabric piece that I have cut. So placing the template onto your fabric, because I'm using the 3.5 inch size, I'm going to put the point of the size that I need, which is just here, against this straight edge, and making sure that your 2 edges on either side of your strip of fabric are straight with the ruler. And then I'm going to cut up here and along there. And then turning my piece around, I'm going to place the ruler back on top, making sure that the lines are fitting flush to those edges of fabric. I'm just going to turn it slightly because it's just a bit of a funny angle for me to cut. I'll just place that back on. And then we're going to cut these two sides. The second way to cut the hexagon shape is by folding your strip of fabric in half, so you've got the raw edges together, and we'll just finger press that. And then using your patchwork ruler and your rotary cutter, you're going to place the 60-degree angle that's on your ruler on the bottom edge, which is the folded edge of your strip of fabric, and this edge you're going to put from that corner going across diagonally. And then we will just trim that edge away. And then when you open it up, you can see you've got the start of your hexagon shape. So twisting it the other way, we're then going to pop the ruler with the size of the hexagon that you're going to be making, which is in this case 3.5 inches, because that's the width of the fabric strip that we're using. You're going to find your 3.5 inches, and what you want to do is we're going to do the top one first. So we're going to find the 3.5 inch mark on this ruler, and we're going to place that line along this edge on the bottom left. And if you look, in fact, actually what you could do is you can place the 60-degree line that's marked on your ruler on the bottom edge, and then you've got your 3.5 inches just here. And then we're just going to cut that end piece straight off. Then turning your piece just slightly so you have a straight edge here on the left hand side. Again, you're going to find your 3.5 inch mark on your ruler. Place that against your edge on your left, and then cut that little triangle off from the end. And there you have another hexagon shape. So that's my two hexagon shapes, one using the hexagon template ruler and one just using the rotary cutter and the patchwork ruler. Next, we're going to cut the triangles. There are two different size triangles in this pattern, so you will have two different widths of your strips of fabric, but this is exactly the same method for any strip width of fabric. So placing your 60-degree angle on the bottom and the ruler point just at this corner, we're just going to first of all trim off that edge, which will give us a nice 60-degree diagonal line. And then I'm just going to pop it the other side, and then again with the 60-degree angle on the bottom. What you're going to do is you're just going to find where that point is here at the top of the triangle to be, and you're just going to pop your ruler against that point, with this line on the bottom edge of your strip of fabric, and we will just cut our first triangle. So there's one, and then we will flip it the other way and do exactly the same thing again. As well as the larger diamonds for this pattern, you're also going to be cutting some smaller ones. Now I'm still using my wider bit of fabric just because it's easier for you to see, but it's exactly the same way as we did with the pink fabric earlier. So you're just going to place your 60-degree angle on this bottom. Now, because this is 3.5 inch wide fabric, I'm going to find the 3.5 inch wide point on the ruler, and I'm going to place that on that edge just there. And then we will just trim that off. Just snip that bit with the scissors. So I've just missed that. So there's your diamond. The pattern also calls for an uneven diamond is what I'm going to call it, which just means that it's not a pure diamond where the edges are all the same size. It's exactly the same method, and the pattern will tell you as to how long you need to measure along with your ruler. So for instance, I'm going to do this at 5 inches. So again, I will pop my angle on the bottom, find where the 5 inch mark is, and just pop that on the edge of the fabric and cut that off. And there you are. That's what I would call an uneven diamond. I think it has got a proper name, but we'll call it that for this video. So that's the other piece that you're going to need for this pattern. There are 8 of these uneven diamonds to be cut all together for this diamond shape, because we're making 2 of them. But as you can see, they're not set on top of each other, just going up like a ladder. So to do that, you're going to need to have them facing the other way, which I know sounds a little bit strange, but if you were to turn this one round, it's still got the diagonal facing the same way, both sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the end off the other end of this piece of fabric we've been using to cut the first uneven triangle. So finding your 60-degree angle, place that on the bottom and the top right hand corner in that corner just there. And just trim that off. So we cut this one at 5 inches. So again, placing your 60-degree line on the bottom, find your 5 inch line on your ruler, and then just cut that piece off. So when you look at the pattern, you can see that the 2 pieces are sewn on, so they look like they've got this angle in the middle. So that's how they will be sewn on when you come to do the block. So that's all the shapes cut out of this lovely sunflower fabric, and you're now ready to cut all of your strips into the shapes you need for making your diamonds. I have all my pieces of fabric cut according to the pattern. So we are going to be making 4 diamond blocks today, and we're going to be doing 2 of each design. So I have all of the fabrics for all 4 blocks. So I'm just going to split them into what I need for my first block. So this is the one I'm going to be doing first of all. So from fabric A, I'm going to need 8 altogether of A3. And then fabric B, I'm going to need 4 of the large diamond. Fabric C, I'm going to need C3, which is 8 of the large triangle. And then fabric D, I'm going to need just 2 of D1, which is the hexagon. So the rest of the fabrics will be for the other diamond shape. So A3, B1, C3 and D1. Okay, so we're now ready to start stitching. On the reverse of one of your triangles, you're going to put a mark which is 1/4 inch away from the fabric edge. So just place your ruler on, and as you can see, I've already put one on just there. You're then going to, with your diamond, you're going to pop your fabric right sides together. The triangle on top of the diamond is going to meet at this edge where your drawn line is. So just here is the end of my line on this fabric edge, and that is meeting this edge of the diamond. And if you want to put a pin in, you can do. I'm going to take that to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew a scant 1/4 inch just along that edge. Once you've stitched it on, just open it out and just either finger press it, or if you've got a little seam roller, you can use that. So that's the first one done. Now I have pressed my seam to the triangle piece of fabric, and the reason I've done that is it's going to be easier for me to match where this second piece goes. So if I pop that on, I can place it so the 2 edges of the triangle, the 2 points, should I say, of the triangle will meet there, and then when I stitch it on, I know it will be in the right place. So I will get that done. Okay, so there are both of my triangles stitched onto my diamond, and there you can see on the back where it's meeting at this little diamond point at the bottom. So I'm going to stitch all 4 pieces together. So then we have got the top and the bottom of our 2 diamonds. There are the 4 pieces that I've stitched together for our first diamond block. We're now ready to do the centre of this block. Now this is going to involve some Y seams where the fabric is attached to the hexagon, but we're going to look at doing it in quite an easy way. Y seams are quite a funny, difficult thing to do, but when I was doing some investigating on Y seams, I noticed that most people who put them in their patterns are actually dealing with larger pieces of fabric and larger shapes. These are quite small in this pattern, so I have come up with an idea of how to sew them so they will be more successful. So here we go. I have completed one set for one of the diamonds already, so that's it on the back, and you can see that those points are really well defined on those corners. I have gone ahead and stitched the uneven diamonds together, so you just place your edges together and just stitch your scant 1/4 inch along that top edge, and then I have flattened my seams out because it just gives a better finish and it's easier to see where the point is as well. So to achieve this, you will need your ruler and your pen. On the 2 diamond shapes of the block, we're going to put some markings on the front of the fabric at these 2 points just here, so on both pieces. So what I do is I just place my 1/4 inch just off the edge of that point, so not right on the point, so it's almost like a scant measurement. And then you've got the 2 marks, hopefully you can see that on your ruler, and I'm going to just draw a line along there, and I'm going to do the same on the other corner. Then on the reverse of the hexagon, I'm going to again mark a scant 1/4 inch on both of these corners here. Taking one set of your diamonds, which when sewn together they look a bit like an arrow, and your hexagon shape, you're going to put them right sides together. So the point where you have marked your 1/4 inch, we're going to put that against where the valley is of your diamond. So in fact what we're going to do is the point of the hexagon just there is going to go to this point just here, and also, so as you know you've made it straight, if you just move your hexagon around a little bit and get your edges together and then pop a pin in, it will actually keep it steady while you are sorting this bit out in this corner here. You don't have to put a pin in if you don't want to, but when I was testing this out I found that that was quite a good way of keeping everything together. So going back to this point, so where you've put your mark, you're going to pop a pin through and you need it to come out between your two, well, between the stitching on the back. And then I'm just going to take that pin out, and then I'm going to turn the hexagon so those two top edges meet, and you have the mark underneath as just a point of reference really. It doesn't matter if that end does not, or that side doesn't meet that mark. It's just really as I say, as a point of reference for where it needs to sit. You'll see why when we do the other side, because actually it's more important when we move the hexagon around. So I'm just going to pop a pin along that top edge just to keep that steady. And I'm also going to just secure that pin through the two layers. There is the first side stitched on to the point that we've marked. So move the other straight edge of your hexagon to the mark that you made on your underneath fabric, and I'm just going to pop a pin in there just to keep it steady. And then just pulling this slightly just so it's away from the underneath fabric, we're going to move the pieces just a little bit fiddly because they're so small. So you just need to do a little bit of manoeuvring with your fingers just to get this fabric flat on the back and the front, because you want this seam here out of the way of the stitching you're going to do along this line. So we're next going to stitch along this edge here, starting from that point. You can do some back stitches or just start from that point and stitch along. So I'm going to go and get that done, and then we'll come back and take a look. There is the first side stitched on. So you can just see on the back that I have flattened and pressed the seams. And now I'm going to stitch the other side on. We're now ready to stitch our first block together. So you will need 2 of your ends per block and 1 of your centre pieces. And folding these pieces in half, I'm just going to match where the little diamonds are and the seams, and just make a finger press mark in the middle there. And then with this one, I'm going to pop a pin just at the top edge of where these two fabrics meet, but on the wrong side. So that should come out in the middle there. And then I'm going to place that. You can mark this one if you want to with a 1/4 inch down from this top of the pressed edge. I'm going to eyeball it and hope for the best, and then pop that in, give it a wiggle just to get it straight, and then you've got your edges match together for stitching. So you've got one of these either side of the middle sets, and we are making 2 of these diamond blocks. This is the second of our 2 blocks that we're going to be making. So you can see with this one we've got 2 hexagons. We have got quite a few diamonds in the middle, there's 7 of them in total, and then we've got those lovely Y seams as well. So the fabrics you will need for this block, and don't forget we're making 2 of them, so you've got A1 and A2, B2, you've got C1 and C2, and then you've got D1 and D2. We're going to start with the 2 ends of this particular diamond block. So for that, you're going to need 2 of the hexagon shapes, 4 of A1 and 4 of C2. I have stitched one of the ends of this diamond block we're doing, and that's how it's going to look. And I've also pressed my seams into the middle of the, or towards the middle of the hexagon. So to do that, you're going to take one of your hexagons and fold it in half on one edge, so as it is wrong sides together. And then taking one of your diamond shapes, in this case I'm using the cream one, that one's going to be at the top of this part of the block. I'm going to fold that so as it's right sides together, and again just put a finger crease in there. And then place your 2 pieces of fabric together so you're matching those 2 creases, and I'm just going to pop a pin in. Now at this point you could go to the sewing machine and get that stitched on, and then come back and pop the next triangle on, but I'm actually going to put all of my triangles on before I go to the sewing machine. So for these 2 corners I'm going to be using this greeny teal colour, so I'm going to do exactly the same again. Fold that in, press, do the same with this piece, place them together and pin. So I will carry on prepping the rest of my hexagon pieces. I'm doing all 4 at the same time because we're making 2 diamond shapes. There are my 4 ends for my diamond blocks. So you can see it's 2 pieces, or 2 end pieces for each of the 2 blocks that we're making. The next part of the block I'm going to stitch is this centre piece with the diamonds and the 2 little triangles that are in the middle. So I've got my diamonds ready, so you're going to need 4 of the teal colour and 3 of the green patterned for each of your blocks, and then you'll need 2 of the triangles also for each block. I've laid out my pieces in the order that I'm going to stitch them together. So row number 1 is going to be those 2 and then a triangle on the top, and then the middle row are 3 diamonds, and then the third row is a repeat of the first row but the other way round. So let's start with the first row. So to stitch the 2 diamonds together, you're going to sew them with an offset seam. So on one of the pieces of fabric, you'll need to mark a 1/4 inch on the reverse of the fabric, and you just need to do it at the one edge. So we'll just put a mark there. And then when you place it right sides together with your other diamond shape, you're going to move it so this end of the mark that you've just put on, which is on the edge of this top diamond, is going to sit on the edge of this piece of fabric underneath. So we'll just move that over until it meets there, and then this measurement here will be 1/4 inch. I'm just going to pop a pin in there. So I'm going to go and sew those 2 together, and then we'll come back and we'll pop the triangle piece on the top. So there are my first 2 diamonds stitched together, and I've pressed the seams to one side. We're now going to stitch the triangle on the top of this piece. So for this one, we're going to place the 2 top points together, and then we are going to stitch our scant 1/4 inch along this side. I've also gone ahead and stitched the other side of this centerpiece, which is this one here, together as well. So I'm just going to press the seams to one side. And then for the centerpiece, you have your 3 diamonds, and in exactly the same way we're going to pop a line on one of the diamond shapes. So again, with your ruler, just pop a little mark on there. Place that on top. Just move it along until it meets the edge of this fabric underneath, and then pop a pin in. So that will be like that, and then you're going to do exactly the same with the bottom one. So it will look like that once you've stitched them together. I've stitched my diamonds and triangles together, so I've got 3 rows for each block, and I have made 2 sets because we are doing 2 diamond blocks. So it's now ready to stitch these strips together. So what you're going to need to do is have your marking pen and your ruler. And on one set, so this set for instance, which is going to be sewn onto this set, we're going to mark across the stitching 1/4 inch. So placing the ruler on the top, and across those two stitching lines just put a pen mark. And then taking the middle set, so that's going to be stitched on to there like that. We'll flip that over, and then taking some pins, pop your edges together and pop a pin through the first mark, which you need to pop the pin right on the edge of the stitching, and it comes out where the fold is of your fabric. And then we're just going to pop that through on the other side. You could also mark the right side of the bottom fabric as well if you want to, if you want to be as accurate as you possibly can and not do it by eye like I'm doing. And then just give it a little bit of a wiggle. Make sure that your two top edges are meeting. And then I'll just pop the pin down into there. And just to keep it all together, I'm just going to pop another pin along this top edge. And then do the same with the other seam. Pin through where it's sewn, which comes out the other side, and then on this fold you're going to pop it through there. And again, just pin those two together, and then I'm just going to pop another pin in the top there. So now those two pieces are ready to stitch together. There's my two pieces stitched together. When you open this out, the seams just in along this middle seam should match and run in a straight line. So we'll just press that seam to one side. There we go. So that's our first part put together. And then I'm going to do exactly the same with the third strip. So again, I'm going to put some marks across the stitching. Make sure I've got it around the right way. So one piece on top of the other, and then again with some pins, pop your pin through where the stitching line is, and then pop it through again where the fold is, where the stitching is on the piece underneath. Just make sure you've got the pin straight, and then pop the pin through. I'm going to pop another pin at that end, and then I'll do the same with this stitched seam here. It's best to not actually put the two bits or the two strips of fabric together and then put the pin through, because you want to make sure that the two pieces of fabric are going to meet along this seam line at that point. So you do want to take the time and just do it separately, and then you will get a perfect match when you come to stitch it. This pin's a bit long really, but there we go. Pop that in there, and another one at this end, and then ready to stitch the third row on. There we have our completed centre of our second diamond block, and I've pressed the seams to one side on the back. So now I'm going to do exactly the same with the other 3 strips. First of all, you need to stitch your diamonds together in pairs. So just taking one pair, what you're going to do is you're going to stitch them on so they are offset by 1/4 inch. So using your ruler and your pen, if you just mark 1/4 inch from this point here, I'll just pop a pen mark there. Then when you lay your other one on top, you're just going to pop that point of your diamond against that mark that you've just made. And then if you wish to pop a pin in it before you go to the machine, then do that first of all. So you're going to stitch each set of diamonds in pairs, and then we're going to stitch each pair together. Now we're going to stitch the diamond borders onto our centre piece. So on the back of the centre, you need to just put a mark where the 1/4 inch is from each point here, and then let's move those out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to match our seams just here. So we're going to butt them together. So like that. And I'm just going to pop a pin in there. And then when we come down to the middle seam, we're just going to pop another pin in where the mark is. So I'm going to stitch down to that point and do some back stitches, and then as we did with the first block, I'm going to twist this part of the centre of the block around, and I'm going to butt the seams up again on this side. So I will go and do that, and then we can have a look and you can see how it looks ready for stitching the other pieces on. Okay, so I've stitched both edges on, and you can see there that you've got this lovely point by using this method, and our seams are matching with the 2 diamonds just there and there. So you want to press your seam to the diamond border. I'm just going to do it with my little seam roller so as we can do the other side. Just flip that over, and there you can see this nice point just here. So we're going to do exactly the same on the other side, and we've got 2 of these to do. When you have your 2 centre pieces stitched together, then you are ready to stitch on your 2 triangle pieces, one on either end, to make up your second diamond block. So for this, because when we press the seams, they have been pressed in opposite directions, what you can do is you can just pop your seams together, so just butting them together like we have done before, and just pop some pins in. Do the same on that side. And I'm going to do the other side at the same time. So nesting the seams or butting the seams, whichever phrase you would like to use. Right, I am attempting to nest those 2 seams. And that last one there. Okay, so I am now ready to go to the machine and stitch these all together using a scant 1/4 inch. Here are my 4 blocks complete. So I have just laid them out in the order that I would like to stitch them together. Now if you wanted to, you could just go ahead and just stitch them together without any sashing in between if you wanted to. I'm actually going to put some sashing with the blocks, so I will stitch 1 piece of sashing on here and 1 piece on here, and then we'll join the other diamond pieces onto the other side of the sashing. So that one will be those 2 stitched together, and then you've got those 2 stitched together, and then you'll have 1 length of sashing to go between the 2 sets. So first of all, we just need to decide what fabric you want to use for your sashing. I'm going to use this cream backed one that's got these 1/4 circle shapes on it. So, and I'm going to cut my strips at 1 inch wide, so then when they're all stitched together, they will be 1/2 inch width between the diamond shapes. So I'm going to make them slightly longer than needed, just so I can make sure that I've got them the right length when I'm stitching the 2 diamonds together, and then I can just trim off the ends. So I'm going to get my 2 pairs done first, and then once they're done, we'll have a look, and then we will measure for the piece that's going to go into the middle to join them all together. I have gone ahead and stitched the other diamond on. To do this, you need to mark 1/4 inch on the top edge of your sashing away from the edge of the first diamond that you stitched on. So just to show you what I did, so I just laid my ruler with the 1/4 inch along this edge of the bottom diamond, and then just put a mark on the top of the sashing. Then what you need to do is you need to find the point on your second diamond, which in this case is just here. Place that against that mark and then stitch your scant 1/4 inch along. Then when you open it out and you flatten it, you will see, hopefully you will see, that you've got these edges are straight along here. So I'm going to get my second one done, and then we will be ready to put them together with our longer piece of sashing along the middle. Once you've trimmed the edges of your sashing flush to your diamond shapes, we can then add the longest strip going along the middle. So we're going to be sewing it along one edge here and then onto that piece as well. You will need to try and match your centre pieces the best you can when you are stitching the opposite side on. So I'm just going to measure this and see how long we're going to need. I am going to cut it longer than the actual piece anyway. So I'm going to cut it at least 20 inches. So I have the rest of my fat 1/4 that we've been using for this project, and I should have at least 20 inches easily. So I'm going to cut my 1 inch strip from this, and I'm going to sew it on to one side of our block and then stitch it onto the other half. So I have my middle piece of sashing stitched onto one side, and I'm now ready to stitch the other 2 diamonds onto that middle sashing. So this is how I'm going to do it. I have trialled it and it did work, so fingers crossed it will work again. We want to get these 2 matching as close as we can, that they run in that nice long diagonal line. It is quite difficult to do because you are dealing with diamond shapes. So how I did it when I tested it was, on one end I marked a 1/4 inch on the top of this sashing from the edge of the diamond. So just placing your ruler on there, and I just did a straight mark on the top edge. If you're using something like a friction pen, then when you come to iron it all, then it should come off. Don't mark too far into the creamy coloured sashing, because if it doesn't come off, then you're going to be left with a mark. And then taking your other piece, flipping that over so you've got right sides together. I'm going to pin this end onto the middle sashing. Now you can use clips if you want to, but to be honest with you, I think for this part of this project you're probably better off using pins, because you don't want it to move. So where the stitching line is in the middle there, I'm going to place that onto the top of that mark, so the stitching line is in, or should I say the mark is in the middle of that stitching line. So I'm just going to pop a pin in there. And then I'm just going to pin the 2 pieces together all the way along that top edge, and then I'm going to stitch it with a scant 1/4 inch. So I will get that done, and then we'll open it up, and fingers crossed the 2 diagonal pieces in the middle will meet. So here is the moment of truth. Let's just flip that open and just have a look in that middle. That's not too bad at all, and the sides here as well should be running as a smooth diagonal. Now it does need pressing, so I'm going to do that until before we go on to do the binding. So I've quilted my mini quilt, and it's now ready for putting the binding on. So I'm going to start on this edge here. This is my binding. I'm going to leave a tail, and I'm going to just clip that on there. Then when we get down to this corner here, I'm going to take it from underneath the machine and just show you how we're going to come back down this edge here. So I'm going to stop at a 1/4 inch away and just do some stitching, and then we will come back and I'll show you how to do this corner. When you have reached this first corner here, you're going to fold your binding back so as it is on this stitching line that's just here. So you've got a point of reference there because you've got a straight line. And then your binding is going to go straight up like that, so it'll be even with the edge of your diamond, and then you're going to pull that back down, and you will just press or just finger press that into place there, and the binding will then come down onto the next straight part of your diamond shape. So I'm going to stitch that down from the top just here, and I'll carry on, and then when I get to this point just here, I'll come back and we'll see how we're going to tackle that part just there. When you get down to the point, you're just going to stitch off to the edge of that point, and then for this part of the binding, you're going to fold this back using the part that you've just stitched as a guide, and again you need your binding to be straight so it's level with this edge of your diamond, and then you're going to fold it back. Now you've got to remember that the binding needs to come along this straight edge. So what this will mean is that you need to pull it down as far as you can just on this corner here. You can see that hopefully, and you're going to have this piece sticking up, which is absolutely fine. So you will stitch it down as you would normally, starting from your 1/4 inch up at this point, and then you've got another one to do here on the 60°, and then another point at the end. So I'm going to get my binding finished all the way round, and then before we actually turn it over and stitch it down, I'm going to press it, but I will do the stitching first of all. Once you have stitched your binding on, we're just going to press it away from your patchwork. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a press, and because you've got these points, you just need to get into those points as well. And the bits on the side. So once you have put your binding on and pressed it from the front, just put it so as it is the right side down onto your mat, and we're going to do the corners first of all. So you've got the 120-degree corner here, so just pull it over on one side, doesn't really matter which side, and just pop a pin or a clip in just to keep it still. And then on this side, I'm just going to pull that over, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manipulate it slightly so it will sit. Pop a clip in there as well, that'll probably help it keep still. So it sits with this corner just here, so it's folded over underneath, hopefully you can just see that, and it's sitting in this corner butting up to the other part of the binding. So I'm just going to pop a clip on there, and then you can see it from the other side. So the two ends of the diamond are a little bit trickier, but first of all, on one edge of the diamond, if you just pull the fabric away, just take the clip off, so you've got that seam and that edge of your piece of work exposed. You just need to trim about 1/8 of an inch off this end, so you're just doing it as a gradual cut, and that would hopefully just help to get a neater mitre when we come to get to that bit. So I'm going to just pop a clip in there just to keep the fabric steady for a moment, and I'm also going to do one on this side as well. Then if you fold this back on itself like you would when you do your usual mitered corners, when you've got squared off corners, and then because we want it to be mitered, so it needs to meet at in the corner here, I'm just going to fold that back on itself underneath slightly, and then hopefully that will sit against that edge. So I'm just going to pop a clip on there so it doesn't come undone. I'm just going to have a look on the other side. It's not the best. I might just, before I take it to the sewing machine, I think I'm going to find something that is pointy but won't pierce the fabric, just to get inside, to get the point of the patchwork itself into a better position. So you're going to do your two corners on your 120 degrees. You've got one opposite each other, and then you've got your 2 points as well. Now when I come to stitch my binding on, I'm not going to do stitch in the ditch, which is what I would normally do, but I'm going to use probably the green thread that I used for my top stitching on the top of the wall hanging, and I'm going to actually stitch it and make it look decorative, just as a straight stitch, but probably about 1/8 away from this edge. So that's what I'm going to do for mine, and then it will be finished.